Hello students, thanks for tuning in. Today, Mr. Armstrong teaches sentence types complex and compound complex. This is a follow-up to two other videos that I made. The first one is called clauses, independent and dependent. Then came sentence types simple and compound. If you haven't seen those two videos, I recommend that you do. It will probably make the subject matter of this one a little bit easier. But today I'm just going to focus on complex sentences and compound complex sentences. Okay? Let's not waste any more time. As always, let's start with a definition. So a complex sentence is a sentence that has one independent clause and one or more dependent clauses. And so, once again, if you don't know what dependent and independent clauses are, you might want to take a look at the clauses video. Dependent clauses begin with subordinating conjunctions, and we're going to take a look at those in just a bit. But basically, a complex sentence has an independent clause, because every sentence has to have an independent clause, and it also has a dependent clause, and that dependent clause depends on that independent clause for it to be a complete sentence. We're going to look at some examples of these, which will hopefully clear that concept up a little bit more. But before we do that, let's take a look at a very long list of subordinating conjunctions. That's a long list. And you know what? This isn't even all of them. These are some very common ones, but they're not all of the subordinating conjunctions. You can write them all down. I would pause the video because I'm not going to give a whole lot of time for it. But there's also lots of lists online. You can find lists shorter than this and lists longer than this. This one's kind of in the middle. One thing I do want you to notice, though, as you're looking at these, is that some of them involve more than one word. So some of these subordinating conjunctions are actually little phrases within themselves, like as long as, or as much as, or if only. They would still be considered a single subordinating. So these are some subordinating conjunctions, and of course, they're important in dependent clauses, and so they're important in complex sentences. Let's see a few of these in action, shall we? We're going to start with the complex sentence. So take a look at this one. I am hungry because I skipped breakfast. So in this sentence, we can kind of start to identify a couple of possible subjects, a couple of different verbs, and maybe you'll even recognize one of the subordinating conjunctions within this sentence, right in the middle. This is a very common subordinating conjunction because we see it all the time. We use it all the time. I'm going to mark this sentence up, though, so it's a little easier to see all of its parts. Ta-da! Colors. So, as you can see, hopefully, I guess I didn't take color blindness into account. Apologies. But hopefully you can still see the differences between these two. I am hungry is a dependent clause. That could stand all by itself as a simple sentence. I am hungry, period. But as I said, we have the word because, which is highlighted because it is a subordinating conjunction. And in conjunction with everything that comes after it, because I skipped breakfast, it is a dependent clause. If you were to just say, because I skipped breakfast, that wouldn't be a complete thought. We'd be waiting for something else. Yes? What? What happened because you skipped breakfast? We need the independent clause, I am hungry, to understand because I skipped breakfast. But also you'll notice that we have two subjects, even though it's the same pronoun, I, and we have two different verbs, am and skipped. We have two different clauses, one independent clause and one dependent clause. When joined together, they create what we call a complex sentence. That's a complex sentence. Let's look at some more examples, though. All right, how about this one? If you tie your shoes, you will walk more safely. That's true. Unless you have shoes without laces, I guess. Slip-ons? You don't need to tie those. Regardless. If you tie your shoes, you will walk more safely. Can you find the subordinating conjunction in this sentence? It's set up a little bit differently than the last one we looked at. I'll go ahead and mark the sentence up now so that we can see the different parts. It'll look like this. So, a little bit different. In this example, the dependent clause comes in front of the independent clause. And so, the subordinating conjunction is the word if, the very first word of this sentence. But if I was to say, if you tie your shoes, we can see how that is dependent on something else. Yes, then what? I need more information. And that comes in the form of our independent clause, you will walk more safely. That could be a complete sentence, a complete thought. It's an independent clause. Put these two together and we have a complex sentence. If you tie your shoes, you will walk more safely. Let's take a look at another one. When the moon rises, Mom and I become hungry now that we are werewolves. Okay, so this one is a little bit different than those other two as well. Let's see if we can figure out why. In this example, we have 3 different clauses. We have 1 independent clause, but 2 dependent clauses. Can you find them? I'll mark it up for you. Let's take a look. This will hopefully make it a little bit easier. We see that our independent clause is right there in the middle. Mom and I become hungry. Easy. But we have 2 dependent clauses and 2 different subordinating conjunctions. When the moon rises, yes, then what will happen? And also, now that we are werewolves, those are both dependent on something else. They're both dependent on the same independent clause, Mom and I become hungry. Does that make sense? Hopefully it does. If not, questions should be posted in the comments below. But now that we've looked at a few examples of complex sentences, let's take a look at the compound complex sentence. You might be able to figure out what it is. It's essentially just a compound sentence, which is also a complex sentence. It's both. Let's see. Here's the definition. A compound complex sentence is simply a sentence that has 2 independent clauses and is joined by 1 or more dependent clauses. A compound sentence is 2 independent clauses joined together with a coordinating conjunction. And a complex sentence is an independent and a dependent. So compound complex just means there's 2 independent clauses and 1 or more dependent clauses. Let's take a look at some examples. Okay, let's take a look here at this compound complex sentence. The monkey won and the possum lost because the monkey is better at chess. In this example, there are 2 independent clauses and 1 dependent clause. Can you find them? Let's take a look. Okay, so hopefully this is not getting too complicated, but the independent clauses are in blue, the dependent clause is in green. I've highlighted both the coordinating conjunctions and the subordinating conjunction. But so, the monkey won. Independent clause could stand all by itself. The possum lost. Also an independent clause that could stand all by itself. Those 2 independent clauses are joined by the conjunction and a coordinating conjunction, one of the fanboys. There's also a comma there, necessary. And then we have the subordinating conjunction, because, and the dependent clause, because the monkey is better at chess. It depends on those independent clauses. And so this sentence is compound and complex at the same time. It's compound because it has 2 independent clauses joined with a coordinating conjunction and a dependent clause joined with a subordinating conjunction. Got it? Let's look at another one. Okay, how about this one? After the game ended, we went to the store so we could buy a new game. This one also has 2 independent clauses and 1 dependent clause. Can you find them? This one's a little bit interesting because the subordinating conjunction could potentially also be a preposition in the start of a prepositional phrase. So what you have to do sometimes is look at the words that come after and decide, is it just pointing to an object like a preposition does, or is there a subject and a verb after it, in which case it's a whole clause. Let's take a look after this sentence is marked up, which is right now. And so, after the game ended is our dependent clause. After is behaving as a subordinating conjunction. Game would be the subject. Ended would be the verb. That's a clause, a dependent clause. And then we have our 2 independent clauses. We went to the store. We could buy a new game. Those are both independent clauses joined by the coordinating conjunction, so, with that comma in front of it, of course. And so once again, this sentence is both compound and complex. It has 2 independent clauses and 1 or more dependent clauses. Got it? I sure hope so, because that's another one in the books. It's all done. If you have any questions about this concept, please post them in the comments below, and I will get back to you, or you can ask me in class. Remember, if this one was a little complex for you, I recommend going back and reviewing the videos on clauses and simple and compound sentences. I think it really helps to watch them in order. Otherwise, have a great rest of your day. I look forward to teaching you again very soon.